welcome to Mary Ann's Alaska Kitchen. Today I'm going to be making a delectable New Orleans style beef stew, which is called Grilliades. I'll show you what my ingredients are. I've got a lot of veg here. Oops, lost a soldier. I've got a whole yellow onion. I've got about 1.5 cups of celery, a full green pepper, about 8 cloves of garlic chopped, and 2 carrots, just sliced into circles and then in half. And then I've got my butter for my roux. First thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna start in my big heavy pot over here, some olive oil, which is about 2 to 3 tablespoons of olive oil, and I'm gonna brown my meat in it. And then we'll move on to the next step. So let's get cooking. So into my pot, I'm gonna throw about 1 pound of stew meat. Brown it off with some salt and pepper until it's got a good Maillard reaction, which just means that it's nice and seared. There's a good brown on it. So as you can see, it's starting to brown. But what I really want to see on all sides of this is this, where it's nice and seared. So I'm going to flip these and make sure I'm checking them all to see that they get a good sear on them. And while this is happening, the bottom of the pot is creating what's called fond, which is just the brown, even close to black bits, but not black. You don't want it burned. That you're going to scrape up with these vegetables when they get cooking. So this is one pot meal, but you have to cook it in steps. So we've got our meat. It's looking pretty good and browned. I'm going to take it out and put it into a bowl. Get a good sear on it. And while that's still really hot, I've got a lot of vegetables to cook. So they're going to take all of that fond off the bottom of the pot and absorb it. So it's going to be magical. So in goes my onion, hello Trinity, celery, garlic, and bell pepper. And I'm going to add to the Trinity some carrots. This is not traditional for New Orleans style cooking, but I love carrots, so I'm putting them in along with my garlic. I'm going to get stirring that around and get that fond up. And the way this gets the fond up is these vegetables start releasing moisture, water, down into the pot. And as they are frying, they're gonna release that water and release the fond from the bottom of the pot. I'm gonna add a little bit more salt, seasoning each step. Break up any of those veggies that are kind of stuck together. That one's cut in half, but it doesn't want to break. Don't worry too much about that because it won't matter. End result is going to be magical. And a little bit of salt on these to help them release the water. Coming up onto the vegetables, see how those onions are turning a little bit brown? Because they're picking up the fond. And it's all the magic of cooking, is those little things that make all of the difference. I'm going to take these vegetables out. Now that they've gotten the fond off, or most of the fond off, I'll get the rest of it when I add liquid. It adds flavor because you're creating it into a caramel color. But it also thickens and makes a gravy of your sauce. That flour and butter does. So it's so good. And you've never had a beef stew like this. Until you've had grillades, you've only had American or French beef stew. This is so different and so delicious. You're gonna really love this. So I'm going to put in about 3 tablespoons of butter into my pot. And I'm going to put an equal amount of flour in, about 3 tablespoons. And start mixing that with that butter immediately. And what you'll start seeing is the butter and the flour kind of create this paste at the very beginning, and then as it cooks it starts creating like kind of a saucy looking thing. So just get that well mixed and keep waiting for it to turn into the sauce. If it looks a little dry, which this looks a little dry, I'm going to add a little bit of oil. And we're going to keep it on medium-high. A lot of people take hours to make their roux, or they bake it in the oven. They just bake their flour in the oven to get that color, but it's not necessary. You can just do it on your stove top like this. And as it starts cooking, it's already gone from a white color to kind of light brown. And within a short period of time, this is going to turn into caramel color. It's still a little dry, so I'm going to add a little more oil. This is going to be a big pot of stew, so don't worry about the amount of oil going in. And it's looking gorgeous. That's the perfect consistency for the roux. And now we've gone from white and from light brown, what you want to see. It's beautiful. We're starting to get to that caramel color. I want it a little bit darker. So the lighter the roux that you make, the more it's going to thicken. The darker the roux you make is going to actually add more flavor, and that is perfect. It looks like caramel. So I'm going to throw my meat back in, along with all of the juice that came with the meat. I'm going to throw all my vegetables back in. It smells so good. And I'm going to add a little bit of spices now. I'm going to put in about a teaspoon of cayenne. If you like it less spicy, use less. I'm going to put in 1 bay leaf. I'm going to put in a teaspoon of basil. All of this will be in the recipe if you push the little downward arrow on the top left or top right of your screen. Sorry, top right. A teaspoon of thyme. 2 tablespoons of Worcestershire sauce. And I'm eyeballing this. If you need to measure, that's fine too. About a tablespoon of either Louisiana hot or my favorite hot sauce, which is Frank's Red Hot. I love this stuff. It's just good. So, so good. Then I'm going to put in a can of diced tomatoes. And I'm going to use my can as a pot or as a measure for my water, which I'm going to put in 3 cans of water. And now the fond is really going to come off the top of the pot, or off the bottom of the pot. Sorry. So there's that. Gorgeous. Now I'm going to scrape that fond up, because now that there's some liquid in there, it's just going to come up, and I can feel it coming up. You will be able to feel it coming up, and it also changes the color of your sauce. I'm going to add in, if you have regular bouillon, that's fine. You can use, I'd say, 2 to 3 cubes of beef bouillon. If you don't have bouillon, and I hope you don't, then you're going to use Tones or Members Mark beef base. This stuff is the bomb. It changes, and it's so good in so many things. I'm going to put about a tablespoon of that into my mix. And I'll keep scraping the bottom. You don't really have to worry about blending that base in, because it's going to boil and it will mix in with everything else. This is going to be delicious, scrumptious, comfort food. And you know, I'd never tasted anything from Louisiana. They got it going on down there. That's all I have to say. Their food is amazing. And it was created from mixing French dishes with African dishes and the local ingredients, which were peppers. There's peppers in every kind of Louisiana cooking. So there we go. Now, because I've used stew meat and it's inexpensive, it's not made to be the best, fanciest, whatever you want to call it. I'm going to cook this for an hour and a half. And because I cook it that long, that meat is going to be tender. So tender, fall apart, delicious. I'm going to bring it to a boil. And as soon as it comes to a boil, I'm going to reduce it to a simmer. And we'll be back then. So we are done. I've got my mashed potatoes done. They're not completely cold, but we are done. There's that beautiful pot of Grilliades, New Orleans style beef stew. So we're gonna get that pulled up and let you guys see. Time to dig into our Grilliades.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
If that isn't comfort food, I don't know what it is.
Very good. Yeah, the meat is very tender. Mm-hmm.
And there's tons of veg in here.
Very good.
You gotta try this. It may be something you've never heard of, but New Orleans has got it going on when it comes to their food. So check out this recipe. Hit subscribe and like if you like it. Leave me a comment if you have any suggestions or you want to chat back. And we'll see you next time.